20 of the John A. Wilson Building and via Zoom. The time is now 10:40 a.m., and I'm calling this public hearing to order. Today, the committee will receive testimony on 3 bills and 2 resolutions. Bill 25-851, the On-Premises and On-Site Extended Hours Program Amendment Act of 2024. Bill 25-915, the 1333 M Street Southeast Tax Abatement Amendment Act of 2024. Bill 25-906, the Avanti Real Estate, Inc. Real Property Tax Exemption Amendment Act of 2024. Proposed Resolution 25-1045, the Catholic University of America Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution of 2024. Proposed Resolution 25-1046, the Sojourner Truth Public Charter School Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution of 2024. And as a reminder to all our public witnesses, you're going to have 3 minutes to provide testimony. And you should remember, if you're testifying via Zoom, to mute your microphones when you are not speaking. I introduced Bill 25-851, the On-Premises and On-Site Extended Hours Program Amendment Act of 2024 on June 20th, 2024. The bill was referred to the Committee on Business and Economic Development on June 25th of this year. As introduced, the bill would allow the ABC Board to extend the hours of operations, sales, services, and consumption of alcoholic beverages for sporting events or any events that the board deems appropriate for licensees registered with the board to participate in the extension of hours program. Absent this standing authority by the ABC Board, I've introduced emergency legislation to authorize extended hours for special events such as the Men's and Women's World Cup, the Olympics, and the district's Art All Night celebrations. I'm going to pause here just to check and see if anybody's on. Nope. No colleagues are online and no public witnesses. This should be a pretty efficient hearing. So we're going to turn to Director Fred Musali here from the Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Administration for testimony. Good morning to you. And if you don't mind raising your right hand before you're seated so I can swear you in as I swear all of my government witnesses in. Do you swear or affirm on the penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide to the Committee on Business and Economic Development and Council of the District of Columbia is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. Thank you very much. Again, good morning to you. And you can begin your testimony whenever you're settled in.
Good morning, Chairperson McDuffie, members of the committee, council staff, and members of the public. My name is Fred Musali, and I am the Director of the Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Administration. I am here today to testify regarding Bill 25-0851, the On-Premise and On-Site Extended Hours Program Amendment Act of 2024. I would like to thank you, Chairperson McDuffie, for holding a hearing and introducing legislation that would provide the Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Board with the authority to extend hours of operation in the sales, service, and consumption of alcoholic beverages for sporting events or other events that the board deems appropriate. Extended hours legislation for sporting events has previously been successful in the district for such events as the Men and Women's World Cup, Summer Olympics, Paralympic Games, and Major League Baseball All-Star Game. Given the significant number of sporting events and similar events that occur both in the district and worldwide, this legislation provides much needed benefit of allowing the board to extend hours for these type of events without having to repeatedly require the adoption of council legislation. Our agency appreciates the intent of Bill 25-851 and supports the legislation with 4 changes. A revised version of the legislation that includes APCA's 4 suggested changes is attached to this testimony. First, APCA recommends keeping separate registration for events such as World Cup, Summer Olympics, and the Major League Baseball All-Star Game from the district's ongoing extended hours program. This is because some licensees that register for extended hours for sporting events on a one-time basis are not interested in or registered as part of the district's permanent extended holiday hour program. Second, APCA requests that the legislation be amended to provide the agency with the authority to charge licensees a minimum registration fee of $100 to help cover the agency's administrative costs. This is consistent with the registration fee that was charged for the World Cup, Summer Olympics, and Paralympic Games. Third, APCA recommends that the phrase for sporting events or any events that the board deems appropriate be amended to specifically include cultural or tourism-related events. This will help clarify for alcohol licensees and the public the type of events that the board is likely to consider for extended hours. Finally, APCA requests that the legislation be amended to require the registration for these type of events to occur at least 3 calendar days in advance. This will provide our agency with sufficient time to review and process these extended hour registrations and notify the Metropolitan Police Department. Thank you for allowing me to testify on Bill 25-0851. We look forward to working with the committee on this important legislation, and I am available to address any of the committee's questions. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you for your testimony, Director Musali, and just really only a couple of questions, given that we've done this before, working with your office on an emergency basis, but I do have a few clarifying questions, given the suggestions that you made in your testimony. Regarding your second recommendation on fees, is it accurate that APCA does not currently charge licensees any fees for the extended hours holiday program, with the exception of inaugural week?
That is correct. The only, just clarifying for everybody listening, the $100 fee I referenced has been charged for all the emergency extended hours we've done, like All-Star, World Cup,
Right.
Summer Olympics. So we've charged for that. But the extended hours holiday program that relates to federal and district holidays, we do not currently charge other than Inauguration Week.
All right, that's so just one more time, just to make sure that for the folks listening, as you put it, you all only want to charge licensees a registration fee of $100 for cultural, sports, and tourism-related events, but not the permanent extended hours holiday program.
That's correct.
Okay, why not?
If that's something the council's amenable to, and you want to do a straight $100 minimum fee across the board, we would be fine with that. I'm just kind of clarifying what we currently charge for and what we don't.
Got it. In your proposed language accompanying your testimony, APCA suggests removing flexibility that I provided for the board to designate any events. You touched on this in your testimony. Any events that the board deems appropriate for extended hours in favor of solely cultural, sports, or tourism-related events. I guess I want to just make sure you're certain that that language that you suggest is going to cover all the future events that you contemplate.
100%.
Okay. Does the APCA statutorily have everything it needs for the upcoming inauguration, and how are the preparations going for that?
We do. It's going well. We are a partner on the committee with the mayor's office.
Okay.
As you mentioned, that came up, we do have extended hours for Inauguration Week. That registration process is already underway.
Okay.
The materials to implement extended hours are out. Just for everybody listening, extended hours for inauguration start the night of Tuesday, January 14th.
Okay.
And then they end the morning of Tuesday, January 21st.
Got it.
So that registration process is already out and available for businesses to register.
Okay. I know this is your favorite part of these types of hearings, where I pivot to something that's not related to the pending legislation.
That's why we're here, Councilman.
But while I have you in front of me, though, I want to ask you about streetery endorsements. And I want, given that they're set to expire at the end of the year, my team's informed me that the agency has plans to make endorsements permanent. But I want to give you the opportunity to put that on the record, if that's what you'd like to be able to do.
Absolutely. Thank you, council member. So I think one of the, as you know, we're coming to the end of the legislative 2-year cycle. I think one of the things that we have left that we want to accomplish is streeteries. As you mentioned, they expire at the end of the year. We have worked with the mayor's office and DDOT to draft permanent, emergency, and temporary streetery legislation to get us past December 31st. Our objective is to obviously make streeteries permanent in terms of working with DDOT. We've had conversations, as you noted, with your staff, and we hope to have something soon to share with the committee.
By soon, you mean?
Like imminent.
Okay. All right. Appreciate that. And then the alcohol omnibus legislation. I know it's been a while, I think, probably
It has.
close to 2 years that we've been talking about this and we haven't gotten it yet. What's the status of that?
I think we're at the final stages with that. I think given where we are in the legislative 2-year cycle, the goal is to get that introduced at the very beginning of the year.
Okay. Is it with you or is it with EOM?
So we have gotten some feedback from EOM. We are waiting on comments from one other district agency, and then we'll be done in going through the process.
Got it. I don't have any other questions. Anything else you'd like to add to the record?
I just want to say you have a great staff, as you know.
I think so too.
That are
Thank you for that.
here, and look forward to continuing to work with you in the committee.
Excellent. Thank you, Director.
Have a good day.
Appreciate it. You do the same. We're going to keep on moving here. Next bill on our agenda is Bill 25-915, the 1333 M Street Southeast Tax Abatement Amendment Act of 2024, which Councilmember Charles Allen introduced on July 8th, 2024. The bill was referred to the Committee on Business and Economic Development on September 17th of this year. As introduced, the measure would abate the real property taxes on the real property located on Lot 2, Square 1048-S, or 1333 M Street Southeast in Ward 6. Just wanted to pause for a second to see if we had any of my council colleagues online. Not seeing any. We're going to move forward with our public witnesses. We actually do have a couple of public witnesses who have signed up to testify for this measure. And again, I want to remind them who are testifying via Zoom to mute their microphones when they're not speaking. On my agenda, it looks like we have Larry Clark present and in person to testify. We have Chander Jerryman, who's an ANC commissioner in ANC 6B, as well as Edward Ryder, who's a commissioner in 6B. And I think they're both appearing via Zoom. So we're going to hear first from Larry Clark. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us in person. You can begin your testimony when you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you, Councilmember McDuffie, for holding this hearing. I would like to thank Councilmember Allen for introducing the legislation, and thank you all for your work on this committee and the council. In my 30-plus years of working in real estate development, I've helped deliver over 2,000 residential units plus 100,000 square feet of retail space in the District of Columbia. I continue to be a big believer in the district. The project before you is approved for up to 900 units, including 100 affordable IZ units. In addition to beautiful buildings with hundreds of residential units and retail space, we will construct fully negotiated public space benefits to access and enjoy the Anacostia Riverfront and trails. Our project, along with the 11th Street Bridge Park, will provide a wonderful eastern bookend to the Capitol Riverfront. By us finishing the L'Enfant Street Grid plan with a new Virginia Avenue roadway, new plazas, hardscape walkways, a rebuilt M Street, and bike paths to the DDOT, all built to DDOT standards. Bill 250915 was introduced in July, right before the council's summer recess. In September, the Office of CFO the staff reached out for information about the project for their report. I appreciate working with them and seeing the report notes the necessity of this legislation to attract financing. Also in September, ANC 6B voted in both the Planning and Zoning Committee and their full ANC meeting to support this legislation. I hope that support letter has been submitted into the record, and I thank Chairman Ryder for his future testimony here. Building permit applications were submitted to the DOB last month in October, and we look forward to a 2025 groundbreaking if we can obtain financing. Investors are very interested in this legislation being approved to cap this uncontrollable expense of property taxes and make the project underwriting acceptable for them to invest in one or all of the buildings. This legislation is intended for the entire project, and any limiting text we feel would hurt the effort that we're working on. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but local banks are no longer able to finance this project. The past years, interest rates hikes, falling office building valuations and regulations have hampered local banks' ability to invest in new projects. I'm sure you're aware of the lack of construction starts and diminished pipeline citywide. National news headlines have not been kind to the district. It's something we battle almost every meeting. They look at Washington DC versus investing dollars elsewhere, and they've been slow to turn. This way we can tell them the District of Columbia is open for business and willing to help worthy projects move forward. We appreciate your support to move this legislation as is, so we may start this project as soon as possible. Anything that you need about this project is in public reports with the Zoning Commission and anywhere else.
And thank you for your testimony. Let's turn to the, actually, we're going to turn to the two public witnesses who have joined us via Zoom, and we're going to hear first from Commissioner Jerryman.
Yes, sir.
And good morning to you. Thanks for joining us, Commissioner. You have 3 minutes for your testimony. You can begin.
Thank you very much. First, I want to make clear that I am testifying as a single member district commissioner for 6B06 and not on behalf of ANC 6B. Chair Ryder, my colleague, will testify as to what the commission voted on. I will note that it was a split vote on this testimony that's about to be delivered by Chair Ryder. But I want to speak to what this is all about. The elements in the legislation talk about what the developer will do. Well, they were going to do that because they needed greater density, greater height, and ANC 6B worked with them to provide that. So that is what they're already offered to do in return for the greater density and greater height for the development. Now, one of the conditions I believe that increase the cost of this for the developer is the roadway. The roadway doesn't stretch all the way to the African-American boathouses at the end of the block. It only serves that little part. First of all, I don't think it's their responsibility to build roadways. That's not what they do. They develop buildings. And it is a waterfront property, not some depressed area. It is waterfront property. Yes, 900 units, which is a huge development with sightlines of the Anacostia. There's 11th Street Bridge project that is going to commence over the next 5 to 10 years, which brings additional amenities. So I don't understand why $61.7 million in tax abatement is being granted at this time. The chief technology, there was a TAFA that was developed, which is a tax abatement assessment. And that report clearly states that the developer only needs it for phase 1, which is only part of the development, not the entire thing. Again, I'm trying to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars. For $61 million, I'm sure DDOT could build a roadway for far less than that. That could stretch all the way to the African-American boathouses who actually do need it. They need dredging. They need all this other support, but we're instead going to give it to a developer for waterfront property, which doesn't make sense to me. I think it is a giveaway. I think some lower amount and for a lesser time frame would be appropriate if the council chooses to go forward with some part of this. But I don't think $61 million over 15 years is appropriate for waterfront property development. We don't do it for other people, and so I'm not sure we should do it here. I thank you for your time. I'm pleased to answer any questions you may have.
And thank you for your testimony this morning, Commissioner. We're going to turn next to Commissioner Ryder. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. We'll hear from your testimony.
Good morning. Thank you, Council Member. I'm Edward Ryder. I'm the chair of ANC 6B. I also represent ANC 6B08, where this project is located, but my testimony today is in my capacity as chair. At the September 9th, 2024 meeting of ANC 6B with a quorum present, the ANC voted 6-3-0 based on the unanimous recommendation of our Planning and Zoning Committee, to submit the following testimony in support of B 25-0915. The development at 1333 M Street has been a long-planned development in an area of ANC 6B near the Anacostia River that is currently underutilized. The development will help bring housing while also enhancing the surrounding infrastructure and public spaces. This project aligns with the district's goals of increasing housing stock and fostering economic development. Economic development in emerging areas, and will help to provide connections to the Anacostia River that currently do not exist. ANC 6B has been supportive of this project and welcomes the value it adds to the neighborhood, including, as outlined in the proposed amendment, the pedestrian plazas, neighborhood greenway, renovations to the Anacostia Bicycle Trail, and the short-term bicycle parking in the public space. The tax abatement provided by B 25-0915 is a welcome incentive to ensure the financial viability of this development and to help ensure it moves forward. Through the tax abatements offered by this amendment, we're not just backing a single project, we're advocating for a development that aligns with the district's larger goals of increasing affordable housing stock, supporting responsible urban growth, and fostering economic development in emerging areas. It's an investment in a project that will pay dividends for years to come, benefiting both new and existing residents. That is the testimony that ANC 6B voted to support, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
And thank you very much for your testimony this morning. I really appreciate it. I'm going to turn first to my colleague and introduce this legislation for a round. Councilmember Ward 6, Charles Allen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks everybody for your testimony today. I think 1333 M Street has had a fairly long and tortured history, actually. This project was one that I know that ANC 6B neighbors and myself were working on more than a decade ago, back when it was under its previous ownership with the Cohen-Siegel Company. And at that time, it was talked about as, an opportunity to help unlock this space that had really not seen a lot of development, an opportunity to help connect and reknit a portion of our city, obviously build new housing, which we need, add new affordable housing, and then a lot of amenities right on the waterfront. It has been delayed time and time again. It's now ownership change that has taken place. But, I'm struck by the fact that we had, I think ANC Chair Ryder said the subcommittee voted unanimously in support of supporting this legislation, and the ANC itself voted 6-3 strongly in support of this. So you may not be able to answer this question, Mr. Clark, but I'll ask you, if we look back to this project's been talked about for more than a decade again. I think I can think of at least 15 years ago when we started talking about this. Obviously different ownership than yours at the time, but have you found, you talked about in your testimony both the current challenges in the landscape and the financing landscape, and I think we've heard this over and over again. Capital markets are not necessarily looking in the district right now, but it is hard to be able to create our pipeline. I think for the first time in a long time, the district actually does not have any current permits being pulled for new construction. So it does mean that we need to look for incentives. Why is this project languished for more than 15 years? Is there something inherently difficult about this site? Access to it? It's kind of a bit of a landlocked space, but what are some of the challenges you've seen?
I mean, the challenges are to what you said, that people feel that it's it's a little isolated. It's not right on top of the ballpark. It was an old contaminated site. We are in for a VCP with the Department of Energy and Environment. So we have a cleanup plan. It's not an extensive plan. It's maybe $1 million, $1.5 million worth of cleanup. But it's not like we are building a building right on K Street where there's sidewalks and street lights and we're just filling in something. It's a bit of a green space. The roads will be built to DDOT standards. There's no street lights. Lines have to be buried. Our PUD is very similar. We sort of took the reins of the past PUD that was approved and accepted by the community. And And we improved it. We have improved it over the past couple of years as well, too, like trying to do it in phases, trying to make it more bite-sized portions for the investment community. Look, we are in for permits. I know there's been struggles, but I will tell you, the investment, the capital markets, I think will be very interested in this project with this assistance and this cap of the real estate cost. And to comments, it's not like DDOT. I'd love it if DDOT built the roads, but they did not. We're not going to get a check from DDOT. We're not asking for a check from the district. We're saying we're paying our taxes right now. Money's not coming out of the district's pocket. You have 1,000 people, if the project's fully built out, that's very conservatively living there, paying you'll probably make 10 million a year in taxes, income taxes and sales taxes just on this. But the main thing is to get it built. If we don't get it built, it's just going to be a property sitting around. They're talking about marinas. We'd love to help improve the marinas. Water Street, we're working with DDOT to improve that. The 11th Street Bridge Park is going to start construction maybe slightly before us. But I mean, we're in for permit. We have a foundation to grade permit. Full permits go in January. Our raise permit is almost out. You will see activity at the site, and that'll be a bit also to lure the investors, to show them the views, to show them what, along with all the renderings and everything, what can happen. But this is vital. I mean, it's really vital. It takes this uncontrollable cost, puts a cap on it, lets us get to this 6 point something, close to a 7 return on cost, which the investors are looking at. And I think honestly, it does show the city. It overcomes everything, the obstacles that you've talked about where it hasn't been built in the past. So we have a great ownership team. We added another sponsor, another partner we have great sponsorship. The capital market groups will tell you that. We're in for permit and we're ready to go. This is just very, very important for us to go forward.
Well, since it got brought up, I do want to note, and you talked about this with the roadway construction, for example. This is kind of a regular thing that we do in the district. We work with a development team who's going to be doing a project, and we set a requirement that you have to build these streets back to these DDOT standards. And sure, I guess I could have the taxpayer just pay the cost up front for DDOT to build it themselves, but this is in essence a way in which we create the standards by which, the agreements by which we want to see these roadways, these public spaces constructed. And through a mechanism like this, it's a way to essentially use this vehicle as a way to have you construct it in a project that wouldn't otherwise happen. And this mechanism allows the project to move forward, because without this, and I think the TAFA, which is a third-party objective review of this, says this is needed for this project to move forward. So let's play that out. Let's say we don't move this bill forward at all. What happens to the project?
I hate to think about it. We'd be at the mercy of the capital markets right now. No one's going to jump at that because these infrastructure costs are so much. When the interest rates were about 3% when we first offered to do these proffers, where part of the PUD process was DDOT saying, build the roads to our standards. And we had an estimate, which I certainly gave to the CFO's office from the PUD, which our valuation was about $6 million a proffer at that time. That $6 million is about 17 million now. A lot of the construction costs have stopped inflating, but they haven't come down. And roadways and infrastructure are one of those. DDOT does not want to build these roadways, and they don't have the funds. And we can get it done. We can get it done. We can do everything we've promised in the PUD, everything we've promised, but we do need some assistance, and it all comes in with the underwriting. And this was a suggested, this made sense, asking for a tax cap on the real estate taxes we're paying versus trying to see if DDOT could find money and to build the roads and lessen. We can do everything we've said we would do in the PUD and are ready to do it. This just helps open the gates to the investors' money and the banks. And we're at a national bank. We don't have any local banks anymore to do this $150 million constructions. It's national banks. And
Right.
It's us battling Miami and Florida and Nashville for their attention.
Yeah. And from a project perspective, and I think this is part of why Mr. Ryder and ANC supports this as well, is we're talking, it will create about 1,000 new residents.
Conservatively speaking, absolutely. It's over 900 residents, and if you want to do a person and a half average, however you want to average, but 1,000 is
Somewhere in
a
that-
solid number.
Somewhere in that ballpark. And then from a requirements around affordability, the project requires to set aside a 12% of the residential gross floor area earning 60% of MFI or below.
Yes, we, at the time of getting that, it was 8% was the requested amount, so we were 50% above that. That was basically through the ANC and a little bit of the zoning commission, but mostly ANC. So yes, we agreed to 12%, and it's at the 60% AMI. We do have a couple larger units that we have at 50% AMI, you know, thinking for families. Also, yet another ANC request, and those are all documented in the zoning order and everything we plan to abide by.
Yeah. I mean, I think any new housing, I think, is a good thing because we need to increase our supply of housing for the demand. But I think having the increased requirement on affordability is very important, as well as this has been a priority for myself, and I think for most of my ANCs in Ward 6, having larger units, having 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units. Because as I like to say, there's a time and a place in my life when a 1-bedroom made sense. There's a time and a place in my life when it doesn't. And you've got to have that diversity of housing stock that works for everybody and for our families. To ANC Chair Ryder, just before my time kind of expires, if you had to look at this, would you agree that the housing and especially the increased affordability was that a shared priority across ANC 6B as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And this is something that was part of the ANC's negotiation, was to get those increased affordability requirements?
Some of the initial negotiations for this project, those housing costs were part of that initially. Yeah. That was another reason when we voted to support the tax abatement bill that's being discussed. Those items that were initially discussed came back up as part of the discussion and some of the reasons why we supported it.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate the ANC's work on this and your support for this legislation. I know my time is up, so thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Just a couple of questions. Sort of building on the conversation that you all just had and a lot of questions that Councilmember Allen had. I wanted to talk a little bit about housing, given what's planned for this project, but also given sort of the state of housing in the District of Columbia. We've led on housing, I like to think, for quite some time. I know I've legislated a lot around requirements for affordable housing. Our Housing Production Trust Fund, relatively speaking, has been an industry leader. And yet we've seen, I think, sort of a shift in conditions around housing, some nationally, but in particular in the District of Columbia. You think about sort of the pipeline of housing in the coming years. It seems to have dried up a bit, given some of the unfavorable conditions in the market, interest rates, et cetera. So I'd love to just get your perspective on what you're seeing with regard to housing development in the District of Columbia right now.
We can, these are other conversations from other folks, but there's still TOPA, which people complain about, things like that, that process. The vouchers.
Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, just so folks at home who are glued to
that always comes up with all the investors and things. I cut out some testimony just for time's sake, but I mean, I've worked over the years with, I'm dating myself by saying NCRC, then DEMPED, then DHCD, on so many public-private partnerships. So affordable housing has always been something that has been a part of almost everything we've, developed on that. There's been other markets where the builders have gone. There's been the past couple of years of when the interest rates were ticking up and the local banks were stopping, that, people are going elsewhere for the development. No, you are seeing an empty pipeline. It's not just me. You can ask Derek Ford, you could ask DEMPED, you can ask any of the commercial brokers who track this. There aren't cranes. You can ask, I even chuckled at our number in the DOB. It was like a 5. I mean, there aren't permits going through right now. So there's going to be some deliveries, into this next year. And then after that, the pipeline is very, very dry. In fact, our project is noted of, I think, one of two. I mean, Stacks, maybe a Hoffman, and just in our general area. But citywide, it's, we
Yeah.
talked to other developers and
I think it's important just to sort
Yeah.
of contextualize
Yeah.
the conversation for this measure pending before the committee, so that people can get that information. Talk to me about, and I know Councilmember Allen, so I don't want to sort of repeat the questions because it's already in the record. He talked about how long he's been involved with this project and it's sort of been out there, but specifically, when did you all get your PED approved?
2020, we
And
were.
how have conditions changed since, if at all, since you got your PD?
Oh my God. I mean, 2020, before COVID, we were talking about changing from an industrial zone to an MU9 and the height and everything that goes along with that, the massing, looking at the old PUD. We were getting our, PUD meetings set up before the zoning commission. COVID came and basically closed everything down. So we actually, to a credit, were able to go through ANC meetings and zoning commissions meetings solely on, virtually, like 4 years later, still going on, but it was kind of wild to be able to do that, and not hauling boards around and actually showing renderings on. So, but interest rates were still very low. We were very optimistic. We wanted to build this project all at once. And we got our zoning commission approval at the end of 2020. We got the order in the spring of 2021. We closed on the land in June of 2021. And then really after that, all heck broke loose. Supply chains, inflation started going up, and some people were still able to take advantage of maybe 4% interest and go, and we were, too early in the plans,
Right.
and we made a decision a year ago, let's get these plans ready to go. So when that we will be ready to go when the time is right,
Right.
and make
Yeah, so-
adjustments. And we've been working on this, tax cap for many, many months as well in preparation.
Let me
for the
pivot
time.
to the, we're gonna have the government testimony
Yeah.
next, but you had the opportunity to review the top of the tax abatement financial analysis.
I saw the draft and I have seen their final, yes.
Give me your thoughts, comments, conclusions based on what you reviewed there.
We spent many meetings. We talked about the pro forma, about the project itself, how to phase it, the difficulties. That we gave them a lot of information. There was a lot of information to intake and fully understand. I absolutely appreciate them saying that they see the need for financing for
Right.
this.
So let me just put it on record. Again, we got folks who love these hearings and are glued to what we're talking about here. So I want to make sure they understand that the top of the tax abatement financial analysis differentiates between the phase one building and the latter phases, finding that a partial tax abatement is financially necessary for just the first phase of the development. And is that something you agree with?
Well, look, the first phase, I appreciate that. That's the one we're in for permit. That's where we've had to decide that we couldn't build 800 units at once. We had to get it down to a bite-sized portion. The 300 unit building next door was not what we agreed to with the zoning commission. The zoning commission wanted the middle building, wanted all the infrastructure, the stairways, the plazas, everything built, with the middle building. Everything was triggered with the middle building. Our
And
time
the middle building is in what phase?
is the east tower, the first phase.
Okay.
But technically, the next tower, the west tower, is also called Building 1, and that's the 300 units. We have one
What
parcel.
phase is the west tower?
Well, that would be technically a second phase along with the
Got it.
smaller building.
Okay.
But if we have an investor January that says, congratulations with this tax cap, we want to invest in the district. We're done with other areas of the city. We think we like this project. You're making it just enough to make it interesting for us to invest. We want to invest in the entire project. Now, all of a sudden we say, well, we have this and we don't have a tax on, cap on that. And it complicates it. We have one parcel right now. We'll eventually probably have it in separate A&T lots, but that's really dependent on what the lender wants. Like, are they going to have, if they have the whole thing, we might just keep one lot.
So is it your opinion that you would the project needs the abatement for the entire project, both phases?
We crafted this as to help the entire project out. And
Got it.
I maybe understand what, but I can't predict what any of the future is on the financing.
Right.
This is for the betterment of the entire project,
Right.
and it unnecessarily complicates it from my perspective. But like I said, I appreciate them noting that they see the necessity for the largest building, but we honestly need it for the entire project.
And Commissioner, one of the commissioners, I think it was Jeremiah, mentioned in his testimony about the infrastructure. I know Councilmember Allen also talked about infrastructure. I'm over my time, but the Seafarers Yacht Club is near the development, correct? You turned your mic off. If you can hit the button at the base of your mic.
Eastern, the district marina, and then the sea, yeah, so farther down, closer to the, all
Have
the.
you had any conversations with them? How are things?
Eastern, we have, district, our zoning attorney knows, and, no, the third one, not so much, but, we're sort of not there yet. If we want to, we're very interested in the marinas. We want to work together. We've talked to National Park Service about how we can help clean up, some of the debris. We would love the fences to come down. We'd love to work with them. We're probably maybe days or weeks away from trying to engage with them.
Well,
but we
I'm
certainly,
going to encourage you on the record to
Yeah.
engage with them.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be absolutely critical as I, chair of the committee, think about this project. I know those are very important sort of institutions around the District of Columbia, particularly in that community. And, we want to see the positive benefits of this development flow to everybody in that community. So
if they can flow up to the retail and our tenants and retailers can flow down to the
Yeah.
marinas and all work together on a new water street that DDOT wants, that connects down the DOEE's, Tommy Wells's, boat shack that he's been working
Yeah.
on, and then walk 100 yards down to the 11th
I got
Street
you.
Bridge. It's going to be a beautiful,
Let's
beautiful
make sure you're
part of
talking to
town.
everybody. I want to make sure you all are doing that. I'm well over my time. I'm going to turn to
So
my
am I.
at-large colleague and member of the committee, Anita Bonds, for a round.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your testimony this morning. I am curious about the project and the extent of the project from the vantage of what is the footprint, the square footage of the footprint?
I mean, it's a 3-acre site, 2.9 acres. We're approved up to about over 900,000 square feet of building. Now that might be garages and other space, but it's a 3-building project. I can send you renderings and sit down with you and go through all of some beautiful pictures online or in person. It's a building designed by Torty Gallis, local architect on Vermont Avenue. 3 buildings are planned right now and have always really been planned. And the first one is the middle building, which has about 498 units. Again, there's 12% affordable of however many units deliver at the time. It's brick and considered exceptional design. We have one thing to always consider on costs too, is we have 4 sides. We're not, in the middle of a block with just a front and maybe some rear. We have a beautiful 4-sided building. We've flown a drone around at 130 feet, and the views to the RFK and the Anacostia River and Poplar Point and all the way down to the Potomac. It's a wonderful part of town. It is cut off by the Southeast Boulevard. DDOT has some plans to make connections over the roadway. Maybe the Southeast Boulevard gets some more attention if as Hill East and RFK gets more development. It's a wonderfully designed project, and we're in for permits. I mean, right now it's just a vacant piece of ground, but we're permitted and we're approved and we're permitted and waiting to break ground, and look forward to having a groundbreaking with the council members out there.
Well, thank you. As my colleague and the chairman of this committee was inquiring about the number of units of housing, I was just trying to figure out what the 12% affordable units really mean in the grand scheme of things. And so you're talking about 12% of 400 and 98 units?
Well, that's in the first phase, but we're built up to 900 units. So the entire build out will be 900 units.
900, so it's 12% of 900
Yeah, so
units.
106 units, I think is something like.
Okay,
is it, yeah.
106 units.
And
okay.
it's all 60% AMI except for 3 bedrooms that 2-bedroom units on the ground floor are at 50% AMI, which is not typical IZ, but it's just something we agreed to.
Yeah, no, it's not typical IZ. We continue to say in the District of Columbia, one of our greatest needs is for 0 to 30% income level. What are your plans to help us with that?
That's a tough one. I have done 30% units but those have all been public-private partnerships, land that DEMPED has put out or NCRC has put out for disposition, and we were awarded it and constructed it. And honestly, 0 to 30 is very, very difficult. You can't even build the unit. You need some sort of subsidy from the city, but I can't.
So
I can talk for
you're
hours.
suggesting that
We
you're
don't have
not-
any 30% AMI
Okay,
units.
you're not getting any subsidy from the city then?
No,
Okay.
besides this. No, besides asking for a tax cap on our real estate.
That's a
Thank you.
subsidy.
So that's
Yeah.
what we're asking for, capping our real estate taxes of what we're currently paying, which
Yeah.
doesn't affect the DC, the Capital Riverfront bid,
Okay.
and cap that
Okay.
expense, yes.
All right. All right. So of these units that you're constructing, how many will be 2-bedroom? Any?
I think it's 30%.
3?
30%. I'd have to,
Okay, 30
I
is
can,
better.
I'll
Yeah.
double check the unit mix and email you if that is not correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you. My colleague, who is pretty much the author of this legislation showed me a map. So I know exactly where you're proposing. So you're not really down at the other end. I guess we call it I guess it's at the eastern end of the river as you go towards the seafarers, where we have a lot of silt and what have you. That's the group you haven't spoken to about your plan, right?
Yeah, they're a little farther down. District
Yeah.
and Eastern are right in front of our property.
All right, okay.
But we've talked, and I can't say, I just haven't personally talked with them. I know our zoning attorney has. And yes, it's a Maritime Plaza is one of the areas. It's the old boathouse, boathouse row is another term for the area. We are in the boundary of the Capital Riverfront bid, which is, we feel very fortunate because they're very active. The clean team, I'm on the board because we are a property owner. The clean team is probably one of the, there's so many impressive events and elements of the bid where they program events. They're kid-friendly, family-friendly. They program movie nights and they promote the area but the clean team, is one of these groups that just is, keeps the area. The Navy Yard is an incredible area and we're happy to be part of it. And that leads to 11th Street Bridge Park that we talked about, the Naval Museum. Washington Gas has the site right next to us that probably is complicated for vertical development, but that doesn't mean it couldn't have other nice temporary uses like the trapeze school or, the putt-putt that's at the wharf or, when there's all types of, I think once this 11th Street Bridge gets going, once we break ground, I think people are going to really see that area as like, wow, and there's marinas and there's boathouses down and the M Street and the bike path and it connects the Metropolitan Bike Trail. It's a wonderful part of town.
I appreciate you putting all of that on the record. I think it's very important for those of us in the district to understand how very valuable your project may be to the future development of that area. And as such, I'm hopeful, and you can make a commitment now if you'd like, that would indicate that you're committed to helping other properties along the water that exist today to grow their desire. Because when we have your property on the waterfront, there is the potential for additional properties to grow and to thrive. And I'm particularly interested in properties that have been around for super decades, so to speak. In other words, they've been here for eons, and they have had very little opportunity to grow and to thrive. And when you come in with investments, I'd like for them to benefit as well.
I'm assuming you're talking about the marina, the boathouses.
Yes.
I think my investor team would kill me if I didn't say, of course we would. We talk about that all the time. We want to work with the marina owners and the city. It's your property. It's the district's property. And they have these leases. And look, they can use some lipstick and more than that. It could use all types of ideas. And if we all work together, it can be a very, very special place. Water Street, DDOT has ideas for it. We have certain agreements that we've made in our PUD about striping and bike lanes, and we're going to do certain things, but DDOT has very grand plans that we're going to work with them on. Absolutely, from clearing out brush that the National Park Service may not get to all the time. We are absolutely committed to that. Working with the boathouses to improve them, to make them look as nice as the wharf. We want to be a part of that, absolutely. And you can count on us for that. Is that a firm enough commitment?
Not totally, but I appreciate your even entertaining it, because I know, you're about the dollars and cents and I'm about the humankind. So I understand that.
I
Thank
like
you
the
very
humankind
much.
as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds, and thank you for your testimony. All three of the witnesses who testified on this measure. We really appreciate you all taking the time, including both the commissioners who testified via Zoom. We're going to turn next to our government witness. If we could have Rick Liu and anybody else from the Office of the Chief Financial Officer who plans to testify to come forward. And I remind you that I'm going to swear you in. If you could raise your right hand before you all are seated so I could swear you both in. Do you each swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide to the Committee on Business and Economic Development and the Council of the District of Columbia is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you both very much. You can be seated and you can begin your testimony whenever you are settled in.
Good morning, Chairman McDuffie and the members of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. I am Rick Liu, Senior Policy Analyst in the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, Office of Finance and Treasury. I am pleased to testify for the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, the OCFO.
Not sure what happened.
And just really hone in on the portion of your testimony where you, both your testimony and in the top analysis that finds that the tax abatement is financially necessary for only the first building that the applicant is presently financing. You said that it, and I'm quoting here, as it shoulders much of the infrastructure cost for the entire site and the project. You mentioned in your testimony that the applicant claims that in the intervening years, since the PUD was approved in 2020, the project's economic feasibility has been challenged by higher construction costs, interest rates, and a tighter capital environment than it was originally assumed. What do you make of that claim? Is that something that you credit, or is that?
Yes, when we did our financial analysis, that is something that we credit. They have, hard, estimates on the proffers in particular from a reputable general contractor here that, in fact shows, the estimates are what was being estimated by the contractor. So that these are current estimates. Based on our work and our market knowledge, we know that interest rates in the real estate industry have increased considerably, as well as sort of tighter lending standards from the lending industry, as well as equity. So costs of capital have gone up, construction costs have gone up, and that's and we agree with the
Okay.
applicant.
And then that same portion, it says, because it showed as much of the infrastructure costs for the entire site and the project, is the thought that because the phase one shoulders much of the infrastructure costs for the entire site and project, that therefore a tax abatement isn't financially necessary for the second phase? What else goes into that sort of thinking and that logic behind the decision to find that the second phase is not financially necessary?
Certainly. When we spoke with the applicant and based on the materials we reviewed, again, with the estimates for the entire project, the anticipated changes in escalation in terms of rents and expenses over the course of this 6 to 7 year sort of overall development, as well as the estimates. We understand the applicant is really financing this first phase and is required to sort of deliver the infrastructure along with that. So therefore, the cost of that infrastructure is really wrapped into the first phase, which, adds an 11, I think it was in the testimony, an extra 11%, which, is going to make financing very difficult to do that.
So in terms of the second phase for the project, though, are the construction costs not higher there, interest rates not higher there, and capital costs not higher there?
Sure. So all of those will be sort of escalated at sort of, our anticipated sort of escalation rates, that, both the applicant and we, I think, agree with. Rents, though, at the same time, which drive revenue, are also anticipated to increase. Again, I think these were, things that we also agree with the applicant on. But without that additional 18 million of infrastructure of roadways and bikeways and public open spaces, that really the first phase of that project is shouldering. Our belief is that the second and third phases should be able to stand on their own without that additional cost.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate you mentioning that rents are anticipated to increase as well. And I know your office, I believe, has sort of been looking at the environment around housing more generally in the District of Columbia. And I don't know that this is something that you would have worked on specifically, but I did ask Mr. Clark about his thoughts on current housing market conditions. I know that non-payment of rent has been a serious issue, one that the council's been grappling with and has recently legislated emergency legislation to try to address some of the challenges that have been raised in the housing industry. We've had nonprofit housing providers and others, for-profit housing providers, advocates and others challenge the executive and the council to find solutions to address what is a crisis in the housing market right now in terms of non-payment of rent. So I wanted to just mention that. I don't know if you agree, disagree, or have any thoughts on that, but I think that is something that is also part of the context in which we consider these types of measures that are introduced for the council's consideration. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I do not have any thoughts on that. That's, things we have heard the similar things to what you have said, but nothing that, that we've sort of seen come through our analysis.
Okay.
Form.
The estimated value of the abatement as proposed in the bill from fiscal years 2029 through 2043 is what number exactly?
For the estimated value of the abatement for the entire property from 2029 through 2043 is 61,731,717, and that is with the tax freeze at 150,000 annually.
Got it. And then the estimated value of the abatement for the first building only, as you mentioned in your testimony, is how much?
Is 37,361,787.
Okay. Can you just shed some light on how you calculated the prorated number for the first building only?
The prorated number, oh, for the first building
Yeah.
only, sure. So yes, I mean, it's still, would be backing out the tax freeze of 150,000 annually. Our assessments are, essentially based on sort of the value of the building.
Mhm.
And, we try to split out the respective components of, commercial and residential, which have differing tax rates. And then, we basically use our Office of Revenue Analysis, typical growth rates over that same period to estimate how much real property taxes would increase. And then we take that full number. It's not a discounted number or anything, but that's the methodology
Okay,
in a nutshell.
okay. Got it. I thought I had another question, but I don't have any additional questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the record before we move on to the next measure?
There is not.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. The next measure that the committee will take up is Bill 25-906, the Avanti Real Estate, Inc. Real Property Tax Exemption Amendment Act of 2024, which was introduced on July 5th, 2024 by Councilmember Brianna Nadeau and referred to the Committee on Business and Economic Development on July 9th, 2024. As introduced, Bill 25-906 would forgive existing real property taxes and also prospectively exempt from such taxes the property described as Lot 123, Square 2836, located at 3421 14th Street Northwest in Ward 1. I'm going to call up the two public witnesses. Oh. We're going to call up. Oh, we got four public. You already see it. You beat me to it. It's good to see each of you. Look forward to hearing your testimony. We're going to begin with Sheila Reed, who's President and CEO of Avanti Real Estate.
Good morning, Honorable Councilman McDuffie and members of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. And thank you to Councilwoman Nadeau to introduce this legislation. My name is Sheila Cross Reed, a native Washingtonian and founder, along with my now deceased husband, Nick, of Avanti Real Estate Services, small minority real estate brokerage business located in Columbia Heights. I come before you today to request your approval of my application for a real property tax exemption predicated upon a combination of my real estate and brokerage services to the District of Columbia, stemming over 35 years, as well as continuing with circumstances beyond my control. The situation is I'm now facing also impacts several CBE tenants with employees who are also having a difficult time paying their pro rata share of the annual property taxes, as well as coping with huge monthly parking tickets because of loss of parking. I just lost another tenant this month. Several public services I have provided to District of Columbia over the years include serving as chair of the Board of Zoning Adjustment for 5 years, currently serving on the DC Reparations Coalition, and appointed to the DC Black Home Ownership Strike Force last year. Avanti specializes in affordable housing and founded Avanti Real Estate Academy to train potential realtors, as well as facilitating numerous first-time home buyer seminars, financing workshops, credit counseling services, etc. In addition to the losses we incurred by the COVID epidemic, when all DC businesses were closed, Avanti was prohibited from access to capital over the last several years due to being exploited by an unscrupulous joint venture equity partner who built a major U.S. aeronautics contract out of $11 million. Therefore, although not being involved, Avanti unfortunately was pulled into the FBI investigation. There were 3 bogus liens attached to my building from the investor, which the FBI promised to release. However, almost 10 years later, this matter is still not complete. Meanwhile, Avanti has been unable to access necessary capital to take care of its obligations, as well as financing for a business line of credit. Moreover, over the last few years, property taxes have been escalating, with my property tax bill steadily increasing, exacerbated by the addition of the exorbitant 18% annual annual interest rate compilations. Thus, the approval of this tax abatement application will allow Avanti Real Estate to breathe and utilize our experience and expertise to create badly needed innovative housing designs and concepts to provide generational wealth, as well as assisting with housing for the working homeless, i.e. those who work every day and live in their cars. Finally, given the current housing crisis we face here at the District of Columbia, I remain resilient in overcoming the difficult challenges, and with your support, hopefully will allow Avanti to continue to provide real estate brokerage services, as well as assisting DC residents with creating generational wealth. Avanti also focuses on providing vehicles to prohibit generational poverty or generational rental syndrome, which is a serious issue all over the country. Thank you for your time today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. We're going to hear from the other three witnesses whose names I don't have. So if you could just, we'll start from my left and your right, but if you can just mention your name so we can have it for the record, and you can hit the button at the base of your microphone. You'll see a light, red light come on, and that means that it's on and you can begin testimony. Again,
Thank you.
good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
My name is Shalora Williams. Good morning, council members, Duffy, and committee members. I am a lifetime Ward 1 resident. I'm a former Civic Association president, ANC commissioner, former executive assistant to a former Ward 1 council member named Frank Smith. I am a former principal of St. Augustine School that's located in Ward 1. I was the chairperson of the board of the Development Corporation of Columbia Heights some years ago under the leadership of Robert L. Moore. With that leadership with Mr. Moore, we have partnered with Horning Brothers and Grid Properties to, when you see the DC USA building, when you see the Tivoli Square. Throughout the development of 40 years since the riots, when we made this development, we initiated the improvement and transformation of Columbia Heights. Through that time, Avanti Real Estate Services made their services available, their expertise available, and their support throughout the whole development. I have a deep love and appreciation for the continued development in this great city. And I know that Sheila Cross-Reed, the founder and owner of Avanti Realty, shares that same devotion. Therefore, without hesitation, I support Avanti Real Estate Services in their attempt to have their taxes exempt. I have had the pleasure of knowing Sheila and the late Nick Reed for over 30 years. Avanti has been a true asset to our community. Avanti has not only goes the extra mile to provide real estate brokerage and renovation assistance to those in need of their services, it also has the reputation of being a friend to help the district residents wherever there's a need. I have always been able to appreciate Ms. Reed's assistance in residential and commercial challenges for others. Avanti has trained many individuals for the business services as realtors and for looking out for the less fortunate. Avanti has survived the pandemic, survived the parking problems in Ward 1. Avanti has always been there for the district government officials, the underserved, the perceived forgotten residents and or small business owners. And while serving these many years, has been saddled with the property tax problem. And when you see Ms. Reed, you see her with a smile. You see her as a pleasant, personal, and professional person. And no one would ever know that she has this tax problem. I ask that you support this application because she wouldn't ask for it if she didn't need it. I appreciate this opportunity to testify today.
And thank you for your testimony today, Ms. Williams. We're going to turn to our next witness. Again, you'll have 3 minutes to testify. Looks like your mic is already on. It's on. and good morning to you. You can begin your testimony.
Okay, good morning, Chairman McDuffie and members of the DC City Council Committee on Economic Development. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today. I am Varnell Washington, a native Washingtonian and Realtor Associate with Avanti Real Estate Services, LLC, for over 33 years. Sheila Cross Reed is responsible for my becoming a Realtor Associate, and she and her husband, the late Nick Reed, influenced me in having a purpose of giving back to the community through the real estate business. During my years with Avanti, I also had the pleasure of serving as the principal instructor of the Avanti Real Estate Academy, assisting new agents with their careers in real estate, making sure they were knowledgeable of various federal and district housing programs and agencies to assist prospective home buyers in the finer nuances of the home purchase process. I also conducted various Avanti homeownership workshops, seminars, and credit counseling classes. Our motto is, we're not in business just to make a dollar. We're in business to make a difference in the lives of others. I specialize in affordable housing opportunities for first-time home buyers and have been tremendously blessed with helping many of my numerous clients and customers and being able to create generational wealth for them and their families. Most of my business today comes from previous customers who now want to either step up or scale down in their current housing, as well as referrals from previously satisfied clients. In the last several years, along with Avanti, with 2 kids in college, I have also been faced with many obstacles which created hardships for the company, i.e. navigating rapidly increasing housing prices for first-time home purchasers, much higher interest rates, along with the company having to be closed down for a couple of years during the COVID pandemic, causing a loss of income for all of us in the Avanti family. The struggle has not been easy, but somehow, with God's grace, Avanti has managed to keep its head above water, and we look forward to brighter days with the help of the DC City Council approving Bill 250906, the Avanti Real Estate Inc. Real Property Tax Exemption Amendment Act of 2024, which will allow us to continue providing vital real estate services to the community that we love. Thank you for the opportunity to present.
And thank you for your testimony. I really appreciate it. Next, you have 3 minutes to testify.
Good morning, Honorable Councilmember McDuffie and the members of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. My name is Alfred Ajiwe. I'm here to submit this testimony to support the approval of Bill 25-0906 for Avanti Real Estate LLC. Sheila Reed and her late husband were my partners in our efforts to help the city increase affordable housing stock for many years. And the company has also played a huge role in helping first-time home buyers and renters in the District of Columbia. One of the highlights of our efforts is being able to do a development of 33 affordable housing units for 60% AMI, which everybody knows is very, very difficult to do in the District of Columbia. We were able to achieve that through the hard work and steadfastness of Ms. Reed. There are 2 essential events in DC that actually led to this request for tax abatement. One of which is the redevelopment of the target commercial corridor in the area of Columbia Heights. That development affected a lot of small businesses over many years due to restrictions in traffic and customers being able to to do business with small businesses up and down 14th Street. And then as Avanti Real Estate was beginning to dig itself out of all that, COVID-19 hit. So the culmination of all these events led the company to a position where this tax abatement is being requested. Based on so many adjustments and moves that the company has made to date, if this tax exemption amendment is approved, it will put the company in a position to be able to prosper and be able to continue to serve the residents of DC, especially the residents in Ward 1 in the Columbia Heights neighborhood. Thank you.
And thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate it. We have one witness who's previously signed up, has joined us virtually, and that's William Jordan. Good afternoon to you. Mr. Jordan, you can begin your testimony. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chairman McDuffie and the council. My name is William Jordan. I'm a 30-year plus resident of Columbia Heights, 14th Street neighborhood. I urge the committee to support the tax abatement proposed for Avanti Real Estate under Bill 906. I would just like to share that I met Ms. Reed and her late husband, Nick, of Avanti Real Estate some 20 years ago as they advocated for home ownership opportunities as the community developed, and more importantly, as they advocated for small businesses, particularly small Black and minority-owned businesses in Columbia Heights. So I've submitted my testimony, but I just wanted really to highlight that Avanti and Ms. Reed have been anchors in this community, and their work has made a difference. Sometimes unknown or unnoticed because she doesn't run around and try to take credit for everything. She just does the work to help people and to help businesses. When we all work to support for the DC USA project that included Target to come to our community, one of the commitments from the development team was 1,500 square feet retail space would be set aside for small Black and local businesses. And Avanti worked closely with many businesses to get their packages together so that they could be a part of that opportunity. As with many things, while the opportunity didn't go quite as we envisioned, it would not have had a chance to be successful without the work of Ms. Reed. Also, I would like to show or to talk about the $2 million TIF that was set aside. It was a special fund set aside for small businesses out of that project. When that project went to closing, actually $1.7 million was transferred away from that small business fund and used for other purposes. It was the work of Ms. Reed that we were able to restore over $1 million to that fund. And that money, in part, went to help those businesses on Park Road, working with the Development Corporation of Columbia Heights, to actually be in a position to benefit. In another case, the 14th Street corridor and small businesses were not included in the city's Great Streets program. And it was Ms. Reed who worked hard between the Bowser administration and the Gray administration to make sure that those businesses now on 14th Street could benefit for that program. So I just wanted to highlight those few things and finally say there's no greater advocate for homeownership that I've met in this city than Ms. Reed, and the work that Avanti does to make sure that new families, old families, you name it, have a chance for home ownership. That is the missing leg in our city's redevelopment. And it would be devastating to lose Avanti and the work of Ms. Reed. So I urgently ask that this abatement be passed. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony, Mr. Jordan. I don't have any questions for the witnesses. I want to just make sure, though, I think we have testimony that's been submitted to the council's management system by William Jordan, Alfred Ajigwe, Vernell Washington. You submitted yours as well, right? Okay. Shalom Williams, you did submit yours? I think we have that too. Okay. All right. I think we're only missing testimony from you, Ms. Reed. So if you could
I
submit,
submitted it.
where'd you submit it?
I submitted at 8 o'clock this morning.
On the system?
I did.
Okay, all right, well, we probably have it. So if we don't, we'll just circle back, make sure we
Yes.
get it so we can add it
Certainly.
all to the record. So we appreciate each of you coming down to provide your testimony in person and providing your written testimony electronically. Thank you very much. We're gonna turn next to our government witness in this matter. Actually, Ms. Reed, can I ask you one question? I'll just ask you one question. The rest of you all are excused. The CFO's top analysis, did you have an opportunity to review it?
Yes.
Okay. In their analysis, they found that forgiveness of the unpaid past due tax liability is financially necessary. However, they also found that exemption from prospective real property tax liabilities is not financially necessary for Avanti to remain an ongoing concern. Do you agree with that?
I'm not clear on what that means. That was not, you said that the analysis reflected that they, repeat that again.
So, give me 1 second. The top analysis finds that forgiveness of the unpaid past due tax liability is financially necessary. In other words, that that you need that assistance.
Yes.
They also found that the exemption from prospective real property tax liabilities is not financially necessary for Avanti to remain a going concern. In other words, tax relief going forward is not necessary.
That's not my understanding. My understanding that tax relief was recommended for 10 years.
It was, but what they're saying is they don't agree with that. That's necessary going forward. I wanted to know if you agree with that or do you disagree with that assessment?
I wouldn't agree with that. However, I would not agree with that because obviously the need for the tax abatement would be predicated upon my being able to pull myself from our company from where we are now. That can't be done overnight, because we have to basically overcome the previous obstacles that we are facing with, that we're now faced with, and that over time it would be like a cumulative thing that would have to be addressed. Can't just all of a sudden say no, say that yes, the current liabilities to abate those, but not future, because we're dealing with a different housing market. As you well know, we're dealing with crisis where it's very difficult here in the district now to be able to provide housing for especially low and moderate income people who cannot afford to purchase. So we had to come up with innovative and creative ideas to be able to present to people to assist them and be able to overcome the obstacles that they have also to be able to purchase and create generational wealth. At the same time, it impacts our bottom line.
Yeah, it says that you lease a portion of your property to other small businesses.
Yes, I do.
Okay, and what portion of the property? How many tenants do you have?
Three tenants. I have 3 tenants in my building. 2 are CBEs. I had 3 CBEs, however, I lost one this month because of the property taxes and inability to take care of the parking issues that they're paying $500 and $600 a month just for parking tickets. There's nowhere to park it there.
Got it.
So those are
So
some
you lost one of the tenants that you had in the building.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the record before we move on to our government witness?
No, I think that I'm pretty clear about the, the need.
And so in your opinion, you would need the tax relief going
Certainly,
forward for 10
absolutely. I
years
would.
prospectively.
Certainly.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for your testimony. We're going to turn next to our government witnesses. If we could have Nancy Fox.
Should I stay or should I leave? Or
No, you're excused. Thank you. and I'm going to swear you in. Just you, you've already been sworn in. You're still under oath. I'll swear Ms. Fox in. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide to the Committee on Business and Economic Development and the Council of the District of Columbia is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. You both can be seated, and you can begin your testimony whenever you're ready.
Good morning or good afternoon, Chairman McDuffie and members of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. I am Nancy Fox, Senior Policy Analyst in the Office of Finance and Treasury for the Office of the Chief Financial Officer. I am pleased to testify for the OCFO on Bill 25906, the Avanti Real Estate, Inc. Real Property Tax Exemption Amendment Act of 2024. I'll refer to as the bill. In general, the bill would provide retroactive real property tax forgiveness and a time-limited prospective real property tax exemption for the commercial property located at 3421 14th Street Northwest, known for tax and assessment purposes as Lot 123 and Square 2836. We refer to this as the property. The property is a small commercial building situated in the Columbia Heights neighborhood in Ward 1. The bill would forgive any real property taxes, interest, penalties, fees, or other related charges assessed against the property as of the effective date of the bill. The bill also provides a real property tax exemption beginning with fiscal year 2025 that would last until the end of fiscal year 2034, provided that the property continues to be occupied by Avanti Real Estate Services, LLC, Avanti, and be used to further the purposes of providing real estate and brokerage services. Avanti purchased the property in 2006. Avanti, owned by Sheila Reed and organized as a for-profit business, provides real estate brokerage and related business activities such as professional development courses that help others achieve or maintain employment in the real estate industry. Ms. Reed's real estate business specializes in assisting first-time buyers achieve home ownership. Avanti also leases portions of the property to other small businesses. The property has unpaid real property tax liabilities extending back to 2017. The property's unpaid real property tax lien was auctioned at the district's tax sale in July 2022. In July 2023, the tax certificate holder filed suit in Superior Court to foreclose Avanti's right to redeem the property. That lawsuit is currently pending. According to Ms. Reed, several hardships, including the death of her husband and business partner, and the disruption of COVID-19 quarantines, strained her business operation and made it more difficult to pay back taxes owed. She states that the tax relief provided in the bill would afford her time to reposition the business, prevent displacement of existing tenants in the property, and preserve the jobs of workers employed by Avanti and the property's tenants. The OCFO reviewed Avanti's corporate income tax returns for 2021, 2022, and 2023. During these years, business revenues exceeded cash operating expenses. Based on the profile of the business's recent revenues and expenses, the business can be expected to be able to pay its annual real property taxes going forward. However, Avanti does not have cash reserves or an ability to obtain additional cash through refinancing the property sufficient to pay off the unpaid real property tax liability and the interest that continues to accrue. Redemption of the property from the tax sale and a termination of the tax sale foreclosure suit would require repayment of all past due tax liabilities, as well as applicable tax sale costs and fees. Until the past due liability is satisfied, tax payments made by Avanti will not be applied to the current year taxes, but instead will be directed to past year liabilities. Therefore, the OCFO finds that forgiveness of the unpaid past due tax liability is financially necessary. Forgiveness of the outstanding tax liabilities would result in the cancellation of the existing tax sale and termination of the foreclosure lawsuit. If the tax certificate is not redeemed or canceled and the tax sale foreclosure process is completed, Avanti may eventually lose title to the property. However, the OCFO finds that exemption from prospective real property tax liability is not financially necessary for Avanti to remain a going concern. Although a separate fiscal impact statement will be prepared, the OCFO's analysis includes an estimated value of the exemption. As currently written, the bill would retroactively forgive, quote, any real property taxes, interest, penalties, fees, or other related charges assessed as of the effective date of this act. As we understand the intent of the bill to forgive unpaid, the intent of the bill is to forgive unpaid tax due amounts rather than all prior real property tax liabilities for the property, whether paid or unpaid. We recommend that the bill language be clarified to reflect the legislative intent on this point. If it is intended to only forgive unpaid liabilities, the bill should so state. With this understanding, the estimated value of the exemption is approximately $414,000 during the financial plan period. The estimate includes unpaid past due tax liability, penalties, estimated interest on unpaid amounts through 2025, as well as the projected tax liabilities for tax years 2025 through 2028. The estimate does not include any amount representing a refund of tax payments made by Avanti during the forgiveness period. If the bill's provisions were clarified to include a refund to Avanti for payments made since 2018, the estimated value of during the financial plan period would increase by $25,000 to approximately $439,000. The estimated value of the exemption outside the financial plan period from 2029 through 2034 is an additional $122,000. We want to talk about some recommended amendments to the bill. The OCFO recommends certain amendments to the bill to provide clarity and ease in administering the proposed real property tax relief. The OCFO's Office of Tax and Revenue can assist in drafting amendments. As mentioned above, the bill does not clearly define the scope of the retroactive forgiveness prior to the bill's effective date. As written, the bill would appear to forgive all real property taxes on the property, whether paid or not. If the intent of the retroactive provisions of the bill is to address Avanti's unpaid tax due liability and terminate the tax sale foreclosure process, the bill should specify that unpaid past due tax liability is forgiven through the effective date. Alternatively, the bill could specify the tax year for which the real property tax forgiveness would begin without limiting forgiveness to unpaid amounts. This approach would authorize refunds or payments made on the property's tax liability while also eliminating past due taxes. To facilitate administration, the OCFO also recommends that the bill include more detail in the mayor's certification of continued eligibility. Similar to other tax relief legislation, the certification should identify A, the property owners and the property's owner and the use of the property, B, the eligible property street address, square and lot, and C, any other information that the mayor considers necessary or appropriate. Lastly, the OCFO notes that the name of the applicant and property owner is Avanti Real Estate Services, LLC. The references in the bill to Avanti Real Estate Services, Inc. should be deleted and replaced with Avanti Real Estate Services, LLC. This concludes my testimony. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Just a couple of questions. I really appreciate the helpful feedback that you provided in your testimony that would help to clarify some of the legislative language. The TAFA that you all provided concludes that retroactive tax relief is financially necessary to prevent the tax sale, but that prospective tax relief is not financially necessary. I would love for you to just elaborate a little bit on how and why those conclusions diverge. I note that in your testimony, you mentioned that, and I'm quoting here, based on the profile of the business's recent revenues and expenses, the business can be expected to be able to pay its annual real property taxes going forward. Just talk about how you all arrived at that conclusion and some of the assumptions that are baked in there.
First of all, we look at the estimate of the value of those taxes and what would be abated or forgiven. And as I think Ms. Reed and other witnesses have discussed, the snowballing of the past due taxes, the interest accumulates at 18%. It's several years of unpaid taxes, and it becomes this large amount of money that's very hard for any owner to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at the financial information that Ms. Reed provided, we look at her revenue, we look at her expenses, look at the cash expenses, in net income. We look at assets and we look at liabilities. Assets being, any cash, any investments, any property, including the property under discussion here. And we look at the liabilities, any debts, any unpaid bills that are on her balance sheet. When we look at all of those things and we look at this past due tax liability, we don't see the money there for her to be able to pay it. The money's just not available to her. Also, we don't think that she has the ability to finance that, given the liens on the property.
Okay. And no, I appreciate that. That's helpful. And I understand as you mentioned, that a separate fiscal impact statement would be provided later in the process. But if only the retroactive tax relief was granted, what would the financial impact be then? And I'm asking about the taxes owed plus interest and penalties accrued to date.
It's essentially the number in the TAFA for FY 2025.
Okay, and what's that number again, just for the record?
$352,254.
Got it.
There's an assumption made about when the bill becomes effective and when that money is available to pay. And
Okay.
Because the taxes keep, every half they
Got it.
additional tax bill. So, but that's the estimate.
Got it. That's helpful as well. I don't have any additional questions. Anything else you'd like to add to the record before we move on to the next measure? Thank you very much for your testimony. The next measure on the committee's agenda this afternoon is proposed resolution 25-1045, the Catholic University of America Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution of 2024, which was introduced on October 24th, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor and referred to the Committee on Business and Economic Development on October 29th, 2024. If approved, this measure would authorize the issuance, sale, and delivery in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $165 million. These bonds will be used for the financing, refinancing, or reimbursing of costs incurred by the Catholic University for the development of its campus located in the Brooklyn area of Ward 5. Anybody joining us online?
Yes, Councilman, I'm here. Council member.
Okay, we're gonna turn first to our public witnesses. Okay, we've got 3 witnesses listed on the public witness list. I understand that one will be providing testimony, and so I'm gonna turn, and if you could just state your names. If you could state your names before you testify, I would appreciate that, just so the record is clear. And good afternoon to each of you. Thanks for joining us virtually. Okay, now we have 3 people who are all present virtually, and I will turn to you for your testimony.
Thank you, Councilmember. We'll give quick introductions and then I will give a brief statement. I am Jeff. Let's turn it over to Rosie Henderson first.
Rosie Henderson. Well, good morning, everyone. Rosie Henderson, Controller and Interim Treasurer at the Catholic University of America. Jeff is going to testify, but I'll turn it over to Andy to introduce himself as well.
Yep. Good morning. Andy Spicknell at Ballard Spar, and we are outside counsel to Catholic University.
Got it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Bethke. I'm the Interim Vice President for Finance at the Catholic University of America. We thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm addressing the committee on behalf of the university to request the District of Columbia approve the issuance of up to $165 million of tax-exempt revenue bonds by the district through the Revenue Bond Program to refund certain revenue bonds previously issued by the district on behalf of the university, to finance certain capital improvements on or adjacent to the university's main campus, and to provide working capital for the university. Proceeds of the bonds will be used to pay costs of issuance, to finance capitalized interest, and to fund a reserve fund if needed. The financing will assist the university with refinancing of certain of its indebtedness and will enhance the physical campus of the university, allowing it to compete with other educational institutions in attracting the highest caliber students and faculty to the university and the district. The university respectfully requests that the Council of the District of Columbia approve the proposed revenue bond resolution at its legislative meeting of December 3rd, 2024, in order to facilitate the closing of the transaction in calendar year 2024. The bonds, of course, would not constitute a debt or liability to the district and will be paid solely by the would be repaid solely by the university. The university's counsel for the transaction is Ballard Spahr, and the bond counsel for the district is Squire Patton Boggs. We thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Just a couple of questions. In your testimony, you stated the funds in part to finance older debt, finance some capital improvements, and to provide working capital for the university. What kind of capital improvements is the university contemplating with these funds? I know you all have been doing a lot of fantastic work on that campus, and I've had the chance to see some of the new buildings along Michigan Avenue and internally on the campus. What are you all anticipating for these funds?
Thank you, sir. Mostly dedicated to student housing facilities. We've got about 120 bed new facility that's in the midst of construction that we will seek reimbursement from these bonds for. So student housing primarily.
Okay. And you also mentioned in your testimony that your organization has used the district's revenue bond program before. How's that experience been in using the program?
It's been outstanding. As a conduit ashore, the district has been a very important partner, and we very much appreciate that spirit of partnership.
Okay. And I know the campus is over in the Brookland area community of Ward 5 in the District of Columbia. Have you all on this measure, I don't know if there's been any community feedback, any response from the Advisory Neighborhood Commission? If any, what has that been?
We have not received any explicit feedback. I should note that
I must say, actually, yes, we did.
Okay,
So
Rosie,
we
please.
do have we did meet with the local ANC, and it did get approval back in March 7th, 2024. And they've also been excited about the improvements that have been made on campus, including this upcoming development with the student housing.
And I would add that the student housing development is a low-rise development at the core of campus, which will be indistinguishable from outside the campus boundaries.
Got it. Okay. I'm glad to hear that you all have engaged the ANC and that you've gotten support. It would be great, just for our record, if there's anything written that they provided you, if you can provide that to the committee, through your council, that would be helpful to have as part of this record. And then you mentioned needing to close, I believe, before the end of 2024 was a really tight timeline. What's driving that timeline for this transaction?
It's just the timing of the reimbursement resolution for the student housing project, but we've made some changes and are hopeful that we could, even if punted into calendar year 25, that we could still accommodate. So we're really trying our best to work with the committee on what works best for it.
Okay, and I'm sure they've already done it, but I'd like to ask for the record that that the Office of the Deputy Mayor and the bond program has explained that these bonds are not the district's liabilities.
Fully the liability of the university.
Okay, I don't have any additional questions. Anything else you'd like to add for the record before I turn to our government witnesses?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you all for your testimony. If y'all can get anything written that you have around that ANC support, that would be helpful.
Certainly.
All right,
Thank
we're
you,
going to
sir.
turn next to our government witnesses. We have before us, if I could get you all to stand and raise your right hand, just so I can swear you all in, I'd appreciate that. Do you each swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to provide to the Council of the District of Columbia and this Committee on Business and Economic Development is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate you all joining us this afternoon in person, and you can begin your testimony.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman McDuffie and members of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. I'm Stanley Jackson, and I serve as a project manager in the DC Revenue Bond Enterprise Zone Program, a function within the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. I am testifying today to request on behalf of the Catholic University of America that the council approve the issuance of District of Columbia revenue bonds to the Catholic University of America. The proposed revenue bond issuance will be in one or more series in an amount not to exceed $165 million. The Catholic University of America has requested that the District of Columbia also known as the district, issue up to $165 million in District of Columbia revenue bonds and one or more series to authorize and provide for the loan of the proceeds of the bonds to assist Catholic University in the financing, refinancing, or reimbursing of costs associated with an authorized project pursuant to Section 490 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. The bonds, if issued, will be secured by a general obligation of Catholic University and will be without recourse to the District of Columbia. Based upon the information set forth in the application, the Revenue Bond Program staff has determined that the proposed project complies with criteria for approval of a proposed financing transaction through the district's Revenue Bond Program. Additionally, the proposed project will promote housing, education, trade, and commerce, enhance employment opportunities, and contribute to community betterment. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning, and I am ready to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony. Just a few questions. I think I just asked about the timeline to the public witnesses and wanted to ask you, what do you understand to be the proposed timeline to complete this project?
Yeah, so we were, I guess, on the same page with it. We initially were trying to push to get it closed by the end of the calendar year, but we understand that things happen and things might be pushed back a little bit. But the plan is to still have it voted on in the December vote, so that they can be prepared to make moves whenever they.
So have it on the agenda for the council's December legislative meeting is what the request is.
Yes.
Correct. Got it. Have you explained to the applicant that these bonds are not the district's liabilities?
Yes.
And you've determined that the borrower is a qualified applicant under the applicable District of Columbia requirements?
Yes, sir.
And have you determined that the bonds were used to finance a project that is authorized to receive funding through the District of Columbia?
Yes.
Okay, and is the borrower able to service the debt resulting from the proposed financing, to your knowledge?
Yes.
And you may have already mentioned this, but I think they mentioned it, but who did DenPed use as bond counsel in this project? I normally hear a new CBE firm.
So we have Squire Patton Boggs, led by Alethea Nanku.
Okay, got it. Okay. How's it going with trying to get some more CBE firms engaged in this bond program as bond counsel or borrower's counsel or one side of these arrangements?
Well, as you know, we do have our one CBE bond counsel on our bench, and that is Tiber Hudson.
Yeah.
We sent the RFP out, as well as sent it to your office, as well as Ms. Bond's office, to make sure that as many people could see it as possible. We reached out to as many minority as well as CBE bond counsel as possible. And what we received back was almost the same response that we've had before.
What is it? Is it some obstacle that they're seeing? Is it just, and we don't have to have this whole conversation on the record, but I love to just, because I know you've been doing outreach. I know your office has been doing outreach. We've been invited to some of the events that you all have done. And so I'm seeing that, which is positive. But what I'm not seeing is any additional CBE firms, minority-led, women-led firms who are actually doing the work. So, and I know that the large firms do a fine job. I hear, Alethea Nancoon, Darren Glenn, all these fantastic law firm partners at great law firms. But I would love a little bit more visibility in what you're hearing from folks when these RFP go out. Like, what are you hearing from the CBE firms?
Just hearing that in most cases, they may not have the tax legal capacity that would be needed by OAG in those reviews. They may not have the expenses to be able, because we can't say to them that, hey, you're going to receive 10, 15, or 20 bond deals a year. And so they would take on an additional expense. And some of them are like, hey, that's just a little too much for them to take on in their tax office, in addition to the insurances that are needed by risk management related to these transactions.
Got it. What about, is there any sort of like mentor protege component to this work that might be contemplated by your office to help build some capacity with some of the smaller minority-led district-based SBE, small business enterprises in the district?
And maybe that's a step we can look to work out and talk with you in your office to look to do. One example of that is actually Tiber Hudson. I mean, they started off as another smaller law firm, and they were working with a larger firm. Then they moved into their own section, and then now they're Tiber Hudson, and that's with Horton.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Right.
I've seen that they've done significant work on bond deals, which is great. But I'd love to see, 5, 6, 7 more Tiber Hudsons, given the amount of bonds that come through y'all's office. So we continue the conversation. I appreciate you putting that on the record and y'all's work to try to really, I think, put the information out to a broader group of CBE firms. So thank you for that. Anything else you'd like to add to this measure before we move on to the next measure?
Not at all.
Okay, I don't have any additional questions. We're going to turn next to proposed resolution 25-1046, the Sojourner Truth Public Charter School Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution of 2024, which was introduced on October 24th, 2024 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor and referred to the Committee on Business and Economic Development on October 29th, 2024. If approved, this measure would authorize the issuance, sale, and delivery in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $40 million. These bonds will be used for the financing, refinancing, or reimbursing of costs incurred by the Sojourner Truth Public Charter School for the development of its campus at 1800 Perry Street Northeast and an expanded campus that would be located at 3420 16th Street Northeast. So we're going to turn to our public witnesses. For this measure, we have 2 witnesses who joined us via Zoom, and I will turn to you all for your testimony. You'll have 3 minutes to provide it, and good afternoon to both of you.
Good afternoon, Committee Chairman McDuffie. Thank you for this opportunity to present testimony for DC tax exempt bond hearings, including the required public TEPRA hearing and the subsequent City Council Business and Economic Development Committee hearing. My name is Justin Lessig. I'm the founding executive director at Sojourner Truth Public Charter School. Truth is a public charter middle and high school currently operating at 1800 Perry Street Northeast, DC, and serving grades 6 through 11 starting this past August 2024. In May of this year, Truth was able to acquire a new facility site located at 3420 16th Street Northeast that will serve as the permanent campus for Truth's high school program. The property is a single parcel of land that is zoned R1B residential district. It includes a vacant church that has a 2-story plus basement sanctuary wing and a 4-story classroom wing constructed in 1953. Truth is requesting that the District of Columbia approve the issuance of up to an aggregate amount of $40 million of tax-exempt revenue bonds of Series 2024. The Equitable Facilities Fund or an affiliate is expected to commit to purchase 100% of the bonds when issued. The proceeds of the bonds will be used to make a loan to Truth that will be used to finance, refinance, or reimburse the borrower for certain costs of firstly, refinancing existing bridge loan indebtedness of Truth placed with EFF earlier this year with respect to Truth's 1800 Perry Street Northeast leased facility site in DC and our acquisition of the 16th Street site. Number 2, the renovation, equipping, and redevelopment of the approximately 42,000 square feet of school space at the 16th Street site to be completed by summer 2025, along with additional site and infrastructure work. Number 3, funding certain working capital costs to the extent financeable relating to the bonds. Number 4, funding any credit enhancement costs, liquidity costs, or debt service reserve fund relating to the bonds. And finally, number 5, paying cost of issuance and other related costs to the extent permissible relating to the bonds. Incorporated in 2018 and opening its doors to students in 2020, Truth is currently operating at 1800 Perry Street Northeast in the old Taft Building, or the historic Taft Building, and serving grades 6 through 11. The property located at 3420 16th Street will serve as the permanent campus for our high school program and it's more or less 275 students. Truth's mission is to empower students to transform the world. Students at Truth will graduate ready for success in college, career, and life. They'll serve as active agents in the construction of peace, and they'll know who they are, what they want, and where they're going. True students can walk into any space, find their place, and make a powerful contribution. We achieve this through a Montessori education. We are DC's first and only public Montessori middle and high school that fosters student-led classrooms through appropriate environmental structure. enabling students to engage in meaningful work with real-world applications. Truth respectfully requests that DC supports the issuance of up to $40 million in tax-exempt revenue bonds on the school's behalf. The bonds, of course, would not constitute a debt or liability of the district and would be repaid solely by revenues received by Truth. We are grateful for the cooperation and responsiveness of the staffs of the Revenue Bond Office and Council Committee, and we look forward to working with them to complete this important bond transaction for our school. Thank you for consideration of our request, and we would be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Actually, you sort of went down and answered all the questions that I had tended to ask. I will ask just about community engagement and just whether you've engaged with the community surrounding the current school or the prospective schools or both, and whether you've gotten any feedback from the advisory neighborhood commissioners in either one of the campus areas.
Yeah, thank you. We have been looking at this space for a couple of years now, actually. So this has been kind of like a long journey for us. And so we have had a really long on-ramp of communication, both with the neighborhood of the new site and with our own school community. That has gone quite well for us. We feel very good about what we've done. Even up to now, I hold monthly meetings with the neighbors of that community. We do have support throughout ANC 5B06, happens to be that particular ANC neighborhood. And again, going back a couple of years now, I've had the opportunity to present at ANC meetings. We do have a support letter from Commissioner Picara, the ANC commissioner for 5B06, letters of support from direct neighbors, also school community members who are really excited. As you know, the Taft building is a beautiful building, and we are lucky enough to occupy one particular wing of it, what's considered like the annex along South Dakota. And it's gotten tight for the almost 300 students that we have now. And so as we continue to grow, the school community is really excited about being able to expand into this new space, but also in such a sort of prominent building at 3420 that's right here in the same neighborhood.
Okay. When do you all plan to close on the loan?
So this is Jerry Levine. I'm borrower's counsel to the school, have represented them for several years. The expectation is that we would be able to get to the council for the approval resolution and then close by the end of December.
Got it. Thank you for that, Ms. Levine. I don't have any additional questions. Anything else you all want to add to the record before we turn to our government witness for this measure? No?
No, I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. We're going to turn next to our government witnesses. Just a reminder that all three of you are still under oath. And I will turn, I think Jasmine Brown is going to be providing testimony.
Yes.
Great. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Chairman McDuffie and the Committee of Business and Economic Development. I'm Jasmine Brown, and I serve as a project manager in the DC Revenue Bond Enterprise Zone Program, a function within the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. I'm testifying today to request on behalf of Sojourner Truth Public Charter School that the council approve the issuance of District of Columbia revenue bonds to the proposed $40 million. Sojourner Truth has requested that District of Columbia issue up to $40 million District of Columbia revenue bonds in one or more series to authorize and provide for the loan of the proceeds of the bonds to assist Sojourner Truth in the financing, refinancing, or reimbursement of costs associated with the authorized project pursuant to Section 490 of District of Columbia Home Rule Act. The bonds, if issued, will serve by the general obligation of Sojourner Truth and will be without recourse to the District of Columbia. Based upon the information set forth in the application, the Revenue Bond Program staff has determined that the proposed project complies with criteria for approval of a proposed financing transaction through the District Revenue Bond Program. Additionally, the proposed project will promote housing, education, trade, and commerce, enhance employment opportunities, and contribute to community betterment. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this resolution. This concludes my testimony. I am available to answer any questions. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony. Just the standard questions that we ask for these types of bond measures that appear before the committee. Just what's your understanding of the timeline for this project to be completed? Closing.
By the end of this year, December.
Okay. And have you explained to the applicant that these bonds are not the district's liabilities?
Yes,
Have you determined that the borrower is a qualified applicant under the applicable requirements?
yes,
Have you determined that the bonds will be used to finance a project that is authorized to receive funding through the district?
yes,
Is the borrower, to your knowledge, able to service the debt resulting from the proposed financing?
yes.
And I'm not sure if you already mentioned it, but who did BenPed use as bond counsel on this project?
Or Darren Gliff or
Okay, or Darren
Yes.
Glenn. Got it. Okay, I don't have any additional questions. Anything that you'd like to add to the record before we close out?
Just that we appreciate that your team moved these as quickly as you did.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
No, we definitely try to work with your office in moving things expeditiously. It has been a challenge just because we're in the last quarter of our council period. So I want to thank my team as well, just for managing the flow of measures that are coming through the committee and those that have been in the committee, working with colleagues and staff and others to get us to this point today for this hearing. And in closing, I'd like to thank everyone who testified on all the measures on our agenda today. As a reminder, those interested in submitting written testimony for the record may do so until Friday, November 15th, 2024 at 5 p.m. And submissions should be uploaded via the council's hearing management system on the council's website at dccouncil.gov. There being no further business before the committee, this marks the end of today's public hearing. The time is 12:46 p.m. in the afternoon.
thank
This hearing
you.
is adjourned. Thank you.